Hello. Now, before you watch this video, which contains my first actual movie/TV reviews of 2016, I have to sincerely apologise to you guys for not giving you any videos like this for the past 4 months or so, and please allow me to explain why I haven't been doing them, at least until now. I was originally going to do a special review of the first Scream movie from 1996 in order to pay tribute to Wes Craven just before Christmas 2015. But because I was doing a ridiculous amount of live reaction videos at that time, I decided to take a little extended break during the Christmas and New Year holidays, as well as delay my Scream review to later on this year in order to not only pay tribute to Craven a year after his death this August, but also to celebrate the film's 20th anniversary. Plus, typing the script to my reviews for these shorts in this video took a little bit longer than I expected it to be, so yeah, so all that's really left for me to say is I hope the 4-month wait has been worth it, guys, and please enjoy the video. Hello YouTube, Film Buff 06 here, and I thought I could do brief reviews for each of the 4 computer animated short film adaptations that have been made so far of the beloved modern classic best-selling children's picture books of the same name, written by former children's laureate Julia Donaldson and illustrated by Axel Scheffler, namely Stuttman from 2015, Room on the Broom from 2012, The Gruffalo from 2009, and The Gruffalo's Child from 2011, all of which were produced by Michael Rose and Martin Pope for Magic Light Pictures, were written and directed by the likes of Max Lang, Jeroen Jaspaert, and Johanna Stuttman, and feature the voice talents of the likes of Martin Freeman, Jennifer Saunders, Sally Hawkins, Rob Brydon, Russell Tovey, Hugh Bonneville, Simon Pegg, Gillian Anderson, Timothy Spall, Martin Clunes, David Walliams, James Corden, Tom Wilkinson, Sir John Hurt, Helena Bonham Carter, Robbie Coltrane, and Shirley Henderson. I'm Stickman. I'm Stickman. I'm Stickman. That's me. And I'm going to start off by reviewing the most recent computer-animated short film adaptation of Stickman, which was initially broadcast on BBC One on Christmas Day 2015. And for those of you who haven't read the original book, it is the simple story of Stickman, who lives a very idyllic existence with his stick lady love and their stick children 3 in the family tree until one spring day when he goes out for a jog and gets snatched by a playful dog who mistakes him for a fetching stick, and thus begins an epic journey across the seasons as he desperately tries to get back to his family in time for Christmas. Now, fun fact for you guys, Julia Donaldson originally wrote the book to cope with the loss of her eldest son, Hamish, who, at age 25, tragically committed suicide in 2003 after suffering from mental illness. Also, her inspiration to write the book came not just from seeing one of Axel Scheffler's illustrations for the Gruffalo's Child, which depicted the title character carrying a stick doll for a toy, but also from the common knowledge that almost every child loves to play with sticks, and that a stick could be used for anything if they only use their imagination. So, what are my brief thoughts on Stickman? Stickman, oh Stickman, oh Stickman, what a beautiful piece of animation I thought this was. The story itself is very sweet and simple. It has this really warm and fuzzy, Christmassy type charm to it. It kind of reminded me of the Toy Story trilogy in some areas. I mean, particularly the storytelling aspect of the sticks coming to life when humans aren't looking, if that makes any sense. And is also really heartfelt in some places and very relatable to anyone who has lost a parent, especially with one particular moment tugging at my heartstrings and actually making me almost tear up without it feeling, too cloying or mawkish. The voice work from everyone involved is terrific, especially from Martin Freeman as the title character and Jennifer Saunders as the narrator. The stop-motion computer animation in this film is just beautifully well done, and it has the feel of a recent Aardman production like, Shaun the Sheep or Wallace and Gromit, that type of thing. The humour is just brilliant, especially the hilarious moment that was shown in the trailer and sort of incidentally, cracked me up when I saw the actual short, where Stickman gets woken up by this seagull after having been unconscious for an undisclosed amount of time on the ocean surface, and he gets startled by this seagull, causing it to fly away. The music by Renee Aubrey is lovely and very melodic to listen to. Also, the pacing is very well done here. For an animated short film that is almost half an hour long, this one didn't feel rushed, nor did it bore me in the slightest or made me want to check my watch. And I actually found myself simultaneously hooked to the screen the entire time, and at the same time really emotionally invested in what Stuttman goes throughout the film, as he constantly gets used and abused for all sorts of different things, including a fetching stick, part of a swan's nest, a poo stick, a flagpole for a sandcastle, a sword, a bow, a bag hook, a pencil, a cricket bat, a boomerang, a snowman's arm, and ultimately a piece of firewood, until the moment towards the end when, spoiler alert, Santa Claus himself, who by the way is marvellously voiced by Hugh Bonneville, eventually comes to the rescue. If you're a Martin Freeman fan, or a fan of Julia Donaldson and Axel Scheffler's work, or have even watched the previous 3 shorts that Magic Light Pictures have done so far, I would definitely recommend that you go and check out this little gem on DVD right now. In conclusion, in my personal opinion, Stuttman is another instant Christmas TV classic, like The Snowman and the Snow Dog, and Father Christmas, will always be enjoyed by both kids and adults for generations to come. It is one of my favourite Julia Donaldson adaptations of all time, right up there with the Gruffalo, actually, and also the Gruffalo's Child. And my overall rating for this short was initially going to be a 10 out of 10, but the more I thought about it, the more it kind of went slightly down on my radar. That is, if that makes any sense anyway. So I'm actually going to give Stuttman a solid 9 out of 10. I am a sweet and handsome guy, as cute as can be. Is there room on the broom for a cute, sweet, handsome guy like me? And now on to reviewing Room on the Broom, which was initially broadcast on BBC One to 7.6 million viewers on Christmas Day 2012. It was initially shown in US cinemas alongside Thor: The Dark World, believe it or not, and it was nominated for a Best Animated Short Film Oscar in 2013. The sweet and simple story of Room on the Broom, for those of you who haven't read the original book, is about a kindly witch who invites an enthusiastic dog, a beautiful but lonely bird, and an obsessive-compulsive frog to join her for an aimless adventure on her broomstick, much to her antisocial pet cat's chagrin. But when a fearsome fire-breathing dragon targets the witch for his meal, will the gang of cute critters ultimately work together to save her before it is too late? So, what are my thoughts on Room on the Broom? Well, while I do think it is a good short film, I don't think it's a great one. Not quite as good as Stickman or even the Gruffalo, and is thus the weakest of the four I've seen, in my humble opinion. And I honestly don't know if it deserved its Oscar nomination or not. The story is short, sweet, simple, charming. It is written in a way that is completely faithful to the book, and also visually expands on it a little bit, and in a way that is not too childish for adults, yet at the same time easy for children to understand. It has a nice moral message of friendship and teamwork. It has a decent ending, and it is also remarkably well paced despite the short running time, and despite starting off a little bit slow, it never bored me, nor did it feel completely rushed. The voice acting from Gillian Anderson, Rob Brydon, Martin Clunes, Sally Hawkins, David Walliams and Timothy Spall is superb. Also, Simon Pegg was brilliant as the narrator. I loved the way that the filmmakers managed to beautifully blend stop-motion computer animation with traditional hand-drawn animation in this film, because that means fans of both animation styles are going to find Room on the Broom a visual treat. The music by Renee Aubrey is very nice as always. I also love the fact that the animators decided to give some of the characters, such as the dog, the bird and the frog, their own sort of visual backstories to make them seem interesting and likeable. I mean, we get to see how the dog is very over enthusiastic about everything. We get to see the frog having OCD as a result of living in a muddy environment. And we even get to see the bird feeling lonely as a result of being, you know, ostracized by her brothers and sisters because of her green feathers, which, by the way, was a little bit heartbreaking for me to see. It literally brought a dry tear to my eye. The witch doesn't have as much of a character in this, but she is likeable nonetheless. The cat especially has some of the best character development and some of the funniest scenes in the entire film, and he is one of my favourite Julia Donaldson creations of all time, along with the Gruffalo's Child, which of course I'm going to get into later on in the video. Yes, I admit the fact that Rob Brydon's vocal talents were pretty much almost wasted as this character, but to me that didn't really matter because I thought the cat worked best as pretty much a silent character like Shaun the Sheep or even Gromit from the Wallace and Gromit films. His reactions to the witch inviting the next guest to join them on their adventure on the broomstick were just priceless, and it was also really hilarious to see the constant annoyance, jealousy and frustration on his face that he feels throughout the film until he eventually grows to accept the idea of sharing the broom with his new friends. Plus, I thought the friendship between him and the witch was very touching, and to me it almost felt like a Wallace and Gromit type of relationship, and all of this is in no small part down to the fantastic character animation. The only flaw that I have with this film is really with the mishandling of the dragon's character. It's not that I think he's a bad character, because he isn't, and it's not that I don't think Timothy Spall does a terrible job voicing him, which obviously isn't the case, because he does give his all to the part, as he usually does. It's just that I thought his character was a little bit underused towards the end. Now, don't get me wrong, his first few scenes were really scary, almost reminded me of Shere Khan from Disney's The Jungle Book, at least the first time we see him in that movie. His chase scene with the witch was intense and dramatic, but the moment the mud monster rose out of the bog, which by the way was very similar to the moment in the original Land Before Time movie, where Littlefoot, Ducky, Petrie and Spike all pose as the tar monster and managed to scare off a gang of random dinosaurs that were harassing Sarah, and managed to scare off the dragon towards the end. I remember sitting at the top of my bed with my eyes glued to the screen and thinking to myself out loud, really? Is that really the best you could do with this character? I mean, he had the potential to be this really scary and menacing creature, but they just kind of wasted him at the end, which really disappointed me, because I would have thought they could have made him a little bit scarier than what he actually turned out to be. But then again, maybe that's just me, and I'm probably asking for a bit too much, really. I would definitely recommend that you go and check out Room on the Broom, either from Amazon Prime or on DVD if you have very young kids to enjoy it with. In conclusion, Room on the Broom is a good but not great short film that at least succeeded in what it set out to do, which was to serve as a simple piece of entertainment for the same target audience that fell in love with the book in the first place. And my overall rating for it is going to be a high 7 out of 10. There's no such thing as a Gruffalo. And now on to reviewing what is generally considered to be Julia Donaldson and Axel Scheffler's most iconic literary creation of all time, starting with The Gruffalo, which was initially broadcast on BBC One to up to 10 million viewers on Christmas Day 2009, and it was nominated for both a BAFTA and an Oscar for Best Animated Short Film back in 2010. For those of you who haven't read the original book, the story of the Gruffalo is that a mother squirrel tells a bedtime story to her 2 squirrel children about a little brown mouse who takes a little stroll through the deep dark wood where he encounters a fox, an owl and a snake who all want to make a tasty meal out of him. But the mouse manages to outwit them by warning them that he is about to visit a made-up creature with terrible tusks, terrible claws, terrible teeth in his terrible jaws, knobbly knees, turned-out toes, a poisonous green wart at the end of his nose, orange eyes, black tongue, and purple prickles all over his back, called the Gruffalo, only to later discover that this creature is all too real. By the way, another fun fact for you guys. Julia Donaldson originally came up with the idea for the book of the Gruffalo in 1999 as a result of coming across a Chinese folk tale about a clever girl who tricks a hungry tiger into believing she is the queen of the jungle and scares him away. So, what are my thoughts on the Gruffalo? Well, first off, I don't quite recall whether or not I actually watched this short for the first time when it was first broadcast, so I was really looking forward to re-watching it for the second time and seeing if it still holds up today. Speaking of which, does the Gruffalo still hold up to this very day? And did it deserve its Oscar and BAFTA nominations? Well, my one-word answer to both of these questions is abso-fucking-lutely. In fact, it's actually my favourite of the 4 Julia Donaldson shorts I have seen so far. The story is very simplistic and could be a little bit predictable, and yes, it does tend to feel a bit repetitive and episodic, with a nice little twist at the end, largely due to the rhyming nature of the dialogue, most of which is directly taken from the book. But this is only a small drawback, because it is done in a way that adds a certain sweetness and nostalgic charm to the viewing experience that will definitely appeal to younger children. It almost takes you back to being like a little kid again, being read to by your parents. The music by Renee Aubrey has to be one of the most beautiful soundtracks I've ever heard in my life. It gives the film a very calming, soothing and relaxing atmosphere, almost like a gentle lullaby. As it is, at 27 minutes, I thought the pacing for this short was just perfect, without it feeling, too rushed or too slow. A lot of people say that if this short was a tad longer, it would have made the experience a bit better, to which I would have to respectfully disagree, because if they did do that, it would have ended up being a bit long-winded, drawn out, baggy, and quite frankly, a bit boring. Now, it is totally understandable that most parents would be concerned about the short's running theme of lying, or in Judge Rinder's words, telling great big porcupines. So I had to throw that in there, because many of them want to raise more honest children. However, the way I see it, the film isn't really about learning to be dishonest, but it's more of a classic David and Goliath story of the small underdog using superior intellect rather than violence to overcome larger obstacles in order to survive. The voice cast, which consists of some of the finest British actors working today, is nothing short of brilliant. James Corden did a surprisingly good job in capturing the mouse's adorable charm. Robbie Coltrane was suitably menacing and gruff, no pun intended, but at the same time lovable as the Gruffalo, almost reminding me in a way of Willie the Giant from Mickey and the Beanstalk and Mickey's Christmas Carol. Tom Wilkinson, Sir John Hurt and Rob Brydon all did great jobs in their respective bit roles as the fox, the owl and the snake. Helena Bonham Carter was especially superb as both the mother squirrel and the film's narrator. I thought it was a very nice departure from the usual crazy, eccentric characters that she has been known for portraying in the past in terms of her career, like in most of her collaborations with Tim Burton, and even as Bellatrix Lestrange in the Harry Potter films. And it was also quite refreshing to hear this sort of motherly tone to her voice. It really was. But by far the best thing about this film is the unique animation. I mean, holy shit. Not only do I think the animators did such a fantastic job capturing Axel Scheffler's illustrations from the book and bringing them to vivid life here, not only do I think they did a great job adding little, flourishes to make each of the characters move and act like real animals, while slightly exaggerating their expressions at the same time to make them vivid enough for small kids to read. But I also thought they did just such a remarkable job blending computer-animated characters with practical handmade sets, thus helping to create a fully dimensional and believable environment. It makes you feel like you are there in this world. I would definitely very highly recommend that you go and check the Gruffalo out if you have very young kids to enjoy it with, or if you are feeling nostalgic and want to watch a lovely kids film. In conclusion, the Gruffalo is a really lovely little masterpiece of an animated short film that gets better and better with repeat viewings. It has enough charm to appeal to very young kids as well as adults. It is one of my favourite Julia Donaldson adaptations of all time so far. And of course my overall rating for the Gruffalo is going to be a 10 out of 10. I'm not scared. And now finally on to reviewing the literary sequel to the Gruffalo, titled The Gruffalo's Child, which was initially broadcast on BBC One to 10 million viewers on Christmas Day 2011, and it was nominated for a BAFTA for Best Animated Short Film in 2012. Once again, for those of you who haven't read the original book, the story of the Gruffalo's child takes place several years after the events of the Gruffalo and is centered around a little Gruffalo who ignores her father's warnings and goes on a little adventure of her own through the deep dark wood in search of the fabled big bad mouse that's been haunting her father's nightmares. So, what are my brief thoughts on the Gruffalo's child? Well, it's not as good as the first film, but I still think it is a great short film, an excellent follow-up to its predecessor, and it works just as well as the first film if you watch both shorts back to back. The story retains the simplicity, the predictability, the repetitiveness, and the episodicness, if that's even a word, of the original, as well as the rhyming nature of the dialogue, which is obviously taken from the book, But what I love about the story to this film is that it doesn't feel like a rehash of the original tale. It takes the basic storytelling structure of the original, but it does a complete 180 with it that makes it feel a little bit different, fresh and new, and it was also very, very heartwarming in places as well. Likewise with the first film, I thought that at just under half an hour, the pacing for this short was just note perfect. It didn't feel rushed, nor did it drag. The computer animation is once again stunning, especially the snowy landscapes, which look absolutely beautiful to look at on screen. The music by Renee Aubrey is, as always, beautiful, and I especially love how occasionally intense and atmospheric it gets during the action sequences, like during the scene where the Gruffalo's child tries to escape the frozen lake, which almost reminded me of a certain iconic scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, that is, if you know which one I'm talking about. And also during the scene towards the end, when the Gruffalo's child runs through the woods in order to get back home after her encounter with the big bad mouse. Most of the voice cast from the first film, including James Corden as the mouse, Robbie Coltrane as the Gruffalo, Helena Bonham Carter as the mother squirrel and the narrator, Rob Brydon as the snake, Sir John Hurt as the owl, and Tom Wilkinson as the fox all return to voice their characters and do a brilliant job, as they usually do. The only new addition to the cast is Shirley Henderson as the titular character, and she gives by far the best vocal performance in the short, which isn't entirely surprising since her character is the main focus of the story this time round. She did such a brilliant job voicing this character who, along with the cat from Room on the Broom, as I mentioned before early in the video, is one of my favourite Julia Donaldson creations so far. I actually remember playing this character in a little stage production of this story when I was at school, and I thought Shirley's portrayal came pretty close to how I remember portraying the character. I also thought she nailed the natural, childlike innocence and precociousness of this adorable and cute character to a T. And there is one particular scene towards the end that hit such an emotional beat with me, where she starts to give up in her search for the big bad mouse, sits on a stump and starts to cry. I just couldn't help but feel sorry for her at that moment. It very much reminded me of the moment in Disney's Alice in Wonderland, the 1951 version, where Alice gets lost in the Tolji woods, and she sort of breaks down in tears after singing very good advice, I would highly recommend that you go and check out The Gruffalo's Child if you're someone who really enjoyed the first film. In conclusion, The Gruffalo's Child may not be as good as its predecessor, but it is an excellent, cute, and entertaining follow-up, and my overall rating for it is going to be a high 9 out of 10. Now, feel free to leave a comment in the section below, and not only let me know your individual thoughts on Stickman, Room on the Broom, The Gruffalo, and The Gruffalo's Child, but also let me know what your personal favourite Julia Donaldson story is. Plus, feel free to subscribe to my channel as always, and until my next video, which is going to be my live reaction to the 2016 BAFTA Film Awards tomorrow night. Please stay tuned for that, by the way. Do take care, everyone, and goodbye.